Iran, a name currently dominating modern headlines through conflict, threats, nuclear ambitions, and secret alliances. But what most people don't realize is that Iran's story is already written in the Bible. From its beginning to its end, Iran appears in scripture not by its modern name but as ancient Persia. This isn't just history, it's prophecy. The Bible reviews Iran's role from the book of Genesis all the way to Revelation, long before it became a prophetic enemy. Persia was actually God's chosen instrument, used to free his people, rebuild the temple, and fulfill the prophecies given to Daniel. Let's begin in the book of Genesis. After the flood, God gave humanity a fresh start. Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, they became the forefathers of new nations. In Genesis 10, we'll find a map of how these nations spread across the earth. Two names are key here: Magi, son of Japheth, and Elam, son of Shem. Madi's descendants settled in the northern Iranian mountains. Elam's people lived in the fertile lands near the Persian Gulf. These two patriarchs, Magi and Elam, laid the foundation for what would become Persia. Reference Genesis 10 verse 2 and 10 verse 22. Genesis 14 gives us the first record of international war. Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, leads a coalition to invade Canaan. He captures Lot, who was Abraham's nephew, in a miraculous victory. Abraham and 318 trained men rescued Lot and defeated the eastern kings. The message was clear: no power could stand against those favored by God. But Elam didn't vanish. Over centuries, the tribes of Elam and Magi grew strong. Clans became kingdoms, kingdoms became empires, and eventually Persia emerged, a force to be reckoned with. The prophet Isaiah and Jeremiah both spoke about Persia's rise. Isaiah declared that God would use the Medes and Elamites to bring judgment on Babylon in Isaiah 13 verse 17. Jeremiah echoed this, prophesying Babylon's downfall at the hands of northern kings. Reference Jeremiah 51 verse 11 and verse 28. These prophecies came to life when Cyrus the Great, the prophesied king, emerged from the Persian mountains. What's astounding is that Isaiah mentioned Cyrus by name over 150 years before he was born. Reference Isaiah 44 verse 28 and 45 verse 1. God called him his anointed and declared that Cyrus would decree the rebuilding of Jerusalem and the temple, and it happened exactly as foretold. Cyrus conquered Babylon, fulfilled Isaiah's prophecy, and gave the exiled Jews permission to return home. Reference 2 Chronicles chapter 36 verse 22 to 23 and Ezra chapter 1 verse 1 to 4. Daniel, a Jewish captive in Babylon, received divine visions about world empires. In Daniel 2, King Nebuchadnezzar dreams of a statue with various metals. Daniel interprets it, explaining that Babylon is the head of gold, and next will come a kingdom of silver, two arms representing the Medes and Persians. Persia would be stronger and would rise to power. Reference Daniel 2 verse 32 and Daniel 2 verse 39. Daniel 7 gives us a second vision: four beasts rising from the sea. The bear, raised on one side with three ribs in its mouth, represent the Middle Persian Empire, dominated by Persia. The three ribs symbolize Lydia, Babylon, and Egypt, Persia's major conquest. Reference Daniel 7 verse 5. Later, Daniel sees a ram with two horns. Again, one taller than the other, charging west, north, and south without opposition. This ram, explained in Daniel 8 verse 20, represent the kings of Media and Persia. The taller horn signifies Persia's dominance. Persia became the greatest empire of its time. stretching from India to Ethiopia. Reference Esther chapter 1 verse 1. It was in the Persian capital Susa that God orchestrated one of the Bible's greatest miracles through a young Jewish woman named Esther. Queen Esther, born Hadassah, risked her life to save her people. When Haman, a Persian official, plotted to exterminate the Jews, Esther boldly approached King Ahasuerus. Her courage exposed the plot, saved the Jews, and led to Haman's execution. Reference Esther chapter 3 to chapter 7. Though Persian law couldn't be reversed, a new decree allowed the Jews to defend themselves, and they triumphed. Persia became a fortress of protection. But Persia didn't just fade into history. Centuries later, after Rome had risen, Persia once again stepped into scripture. In Matthew chapter 2, wise men from the east, likely Persian Magi, traveled to find the newborn king. They were guided by a star. They came bearing gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, symbolizing Jesus' kingship, divinity, and future sacrifice. These Magi may have been influenced by Daniel's prophecies, preserved for generations in Persian culture. Reference Matthew chapter 2 verse 1 to 12, Daniel chapter 9 verse 25. However, Persia's story doesn't end in Bethlehem. Ezekiel 38 foretells a future war, the war of Gog and Magog. In the last days, a coalition will rise against Israel, and Persia is named among them in Ezekiel 38 verse 5, alongside nations like Cush, which is now Sudan, Put, which is now Libya, Gomer, and Togarmah, which is now Turkey. Persia will join this alliance, but this also triggers divine judgment. Earthquakes, fire, and confusion will destroy the invaders in Ezekiel 38 verse 18 to 23. Yet, even here, God offers hope. In Jeremiah 49 verse 34 to 39, a little known prophecy speaks of Elam. First, God promises to shatter Elam's strength, but he also declares, "In the last days, I will restore the fortunes of Elam." That means even Iran, despite its future role in judgment, has a redemptive promise. From Genesis to Revelation, Persia stands as a mirror to humanity, chosen, fallen, redeemed, and judged. Yet in the end, restoration is possible. Zechariah chapter 14 speaks of a future where all nations, including those once against Israel, will ascend to Jerusalem to worship the King. Perhaps Elam will be among them, transformed, restored, and finally at peace. So where are we today in this story? Do the headlines reveal ancient prophecies coming to life? Are we witnessing Persia stepping into its final role? Only time will tell, but scripture has already spoken, and every prophecy fulfilled so far gives us reason to believe the rest will come to pass.